Have you ever wondered about some interesting facts about GFIs? Stick around, and today we're going to show you. Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk all about GFIs. I'm going to make a few part series on videos on how these GFIs work and a number of applications. So stick around, you might actually learn a few things. So GFCIs or GFIs, ground fault circuit interrupters or ground fault interrupters, what we call them, just GFCIs or GFIs in the field. An electrician's worst nightmare, those in smoke detectors. So what a GFCI does, or what a GFI does, is it detects any leakage to ground between hot and neutral. So if there's any variance in the internal circuitry or leakage to ground, it will trip with any more than 5 milliamps of current. Now, there are several different kinds of GFIs. Some are absolute garbage and other ones are great. We've learned over the years, I'm not going to mention the garbage ones, but the great ones or the good ones are made by Levington. Now Levington comes in a couple of different varieties. They come with a standard GFCI, a 15 amp or 20 amp, and then they also have an exterior rated GFCI. So you need to look for the little WR on the bottom of the GFCI, which means weather rated. Now, the first thing that you may not have known about a GFCI, when a GFCI first gets power, it needs to be reset before it will work. So if a GFI is first installed or you have an electrician install it, it needs to have power the first time to activate the electronics when it gets when you hit the reset button, and then moving forward you can test it. GFCIs have a line and a load on the back side. So basically we hook it up to the line, and anything connected to the load is then downstream of that GFCI or downfed of that GFCI. Now it's extremely important to get the line and load correct. In other videos I'm going to show that, but yeah, it's extremely important to get that line and load correct. So I also want to mention that it's really important that if we install a GFCI, that we properly check the downfed load. So for example, if we have one GFCI protecting 4 other outdoor plugs, we need to be sure that those 4 other outdoor plugs are on the load. Because what's happened in the past, and I've seen a few electricians do this, is they'll stick multiple GFCIs on, and what you don't want to get yourself into a situation is that a GFCI is protecting a GFCI. So that means that the first one is on the line, and then it goes to the second one, which is on the load, and then the line, and then the load. And what happens is if the one GFCI trips or pops, it needs to be reset, then you have to go around and reset all of them. And that's where it really can cost a lot in service fees, because you have your electrician running around trying to find out where these things all need to be reset, and they can play tricks on the best of us. If we get that load and the line mixed up, then the GFCI will still light up, and it may still reset, but there won't be any power coming out of the end of the GFCI or out of the receptacle part. So we've seen that happen several times, especially with DIYers that try to change them themselves and they get them backwards, and they just don't work. All kinds of funky things go on. Now with GFCIs, some of them have a little light on the bottom to indicate that they're working. Other ones have a red light that flash when they need to be replaced. So the standard 15 amp GFCI, or the standard 15 amp receptacle, is rated for 14 gauge wire, NMD or Romex. And then the 20 amp T-slot is rated for the 12 gauge NMD or Romex. So on the back of the GFCI you can see that there's clearly a line on the top part of the GFCI, and then the bottom part usually has yellow or orange tape on it until you take it off to use the load. So that's where we hook the load up. So when we hook the line up, we get the white and the hot wires on there correctly. Anything that's hooked to the load then that's obviously going to be protected by the GFCI as well. So that examples of that would come in for outside outlets. We see that a lot. So it's just to basically save money. So if we have a weather rated outside receptacle, GFCI, and then it down feeds or protects, 3 or 4 other outside receptacles, they're all protected by that GFCI. And if it goes or needs to be reset, then you need to reset the ground fault in order for it for the other outlets to work. Now, in general, when a GFCI is installed outside, we usually use an in-use waterproof cover that basically allows the client to plug something in and close the cover over it. This helps protect against moisture, and it also helps protect against rain, which causes nuisance tripping, which is one of our biggest service calls. We get nuisance trips, and we get GFIs that have water that have gotten into them, and then we need to replace them. So a GFI should be reset and tested at least once every 6 months. That's what's recommended by the manufacturer, just to make sure it's working correctly. And they can be pretty sensitive, guys. So some of the stuff that you plug in, if it's detecting any leakage to ground or any moisture in whatever you're plugging in, then it'll trip. We get a lot of calls about those. Now, these outlets come in 15 amp, 20 amp T-slot version, and they come in tamper resistant and non-tamper resistant. But this would be a better quality GFI. Like I said, made by Levington. They're not paying me to do this video, but just from rule of thumb and the amount of replacement service calls that we've had over the years, we prefer to go with the higher grade quality product, just because it lasts longer. Now, I mentioned earlier about the line and the load being correct. Whenever we're doing the line and the load, it's always a good idea for us to shut the power off, obviously, if we're going to replace the GFCI, and then test for power, and then make sure that we get it on the line. Whenever we downfeed to the load, we have to make sure that those are absolutely correct and they go by the diagram. So black white on one side and black white on the other side, top and bottom. Now, GFCIs are supposed to be installed within 1.5 meters of a water source, or 5 feet of a water source. So if it's next to a sink, we need to have a GFCI protection, bathroom vanity, and anything that's associated with water, like a swimming pool heat pump or a jacuzzi or a hot tub, anything like that, that your protection or your safety might be in jeopardy. So these GFCI outlets are not the only format that they come in. You can get them in GFCI outlets, 15 or 20, multiple colors. They also come in what we call a faceless GFCI. So basically it has a test and a reset button on the front, but it has nothing to plug into. So that's basically to offer GFCI protection to, like, say, a jacuzzi tub, where you wouldn't very commonly get in there to plug anything in. It just protects it, and then the reset button's in there. And the superior product to GFCI outlet is an actual GFCI breaker. So the GFCI breaker would go in the consumer's panel, and that actually has the reset or the trip button right on it. Now, here's an example of a GFCI breaker. This actually replaces the GFCI outlet. This would go right in the consumer's panel, and it has the test and the reset button right on it. The test button right on it. The reset would obviously be the breaker itself. And this is a way to save money to protect a whole series of circuits. This is a way to save money to protect a whole circuit. And this is what's known as a faceless GFI, like I mentioned earlier. So this, as you can see, has nothing that can be plugged into it, but it still has the test and the reset button. And these would be commonly used as a cheaper method to, say, protect a Whirlpool tub that has a 15 amp 120 volt circuit. So these are about 30 bucks, and these are about 80 bucks. Now, we do get into examples where GFCIs have no buttons. So if you see a receptacle that says GFCI protected and it has no reset button, chances are that that's the load of a GFCI somewhere. So that means that you have to hunt around for the GFCI to find the reset button. I actually have a video on that for outdoor plugs right up here in the corner of the screen if you want to watch that. Anyway, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. I see a lot of you guys that are watching the videos that aren't subscribing. So whenever you subscribe, it helps the channel greatly. So anybody that wouldn't mind subscribing would be great. And don't forget that these videos are filmed in Canada. And never do your own electrical work. Always consult in your own local licensed electrician. So that's it for today, guys. We'll see you in further videos where we talk more about GFCIs.